Reverend Ben Bowden to lead our service.
Good morning everyone and welcome to worship on this first Sunday of Lent in the beautiful sunshine. Our call to worship. When the world is no longer a paradise and creation shows its full power over us still, and we are brought down to size on this small planet of ours, we worship. When the way is more barren than beautiful, when the path is more a climb than a stroll, when the desert expands and the horizon stretches, we worship. We worship because we can. We worship because we hope. We worship because we know our vulnerability when things shift and we need to hold on. We worship. It is the only strength we have for the journey. Welcome to Lent, a time when we journey closer to God, a time when we open ourselves up to be challenged by God. Lord, I come to you. Help me be changed, renewed. We sing from the source, number 329. you will have seen from the notices, during Lent we are having a discussion group. And the resources we're using are from Methodist Homes for the Aged. Back in November, I went on a conference that the Methodist Homes for the Aged organised. And in the conference they launched a new book, a book called Telling Our Stories. And for the previous 2 years, various chaplains in different homes across the country had been collecting stories of the lives of the residents. And as well as publishing a book of the stories, they also created a Lenten discussion series. And each week we hear 2 stories of real live people living in Methodist homes. And our discussion groups are going to form the basis for our services during the next 5 weeks of Lent up until Palm Sunday. And our theme for today is generous friendship. So let us pray. Loving God, we praise you for coming to us in Christ, walking our earth and sharing our humanity. We praise you for the inspiration you give us through him, the knowledge that he experienced temptation just as we do, yet refused to compromise, staying true to his chosen path despite the awful cost. We praise you for the revelation of your purpose seen in Jesus. Everything we see of you through his earthly ministry. We remember how he taught the multitude, instructed his disciples, and interpreted the law. How he healed the sick, responded to the needy, and cared for the poor. How he confronted injustice, challenged oppression, and overcame evil. We praise you for the revelation of your love through Jesus, helping us to see you through his actions and his attitudes. And as we reflect on love and generous friendship, we thank you for the people around us who understand us and support us. We thank you for those who continue their friendships with us in spite of who we are. We thank you for families who love us for who we are. And we thank you for your love for us, a love which never fails. We offer this prayer in the name of your Son, who offered his life as a sign of his love for the world, Jesus Christ. Amen. We had a bit of a discussion on Thursday about which hymn we should choose, whether it should be We Have a Friend, What a Friend We Have in Jesus, which those of you who come singing at Aldridge Court will know I love, especially our sort of cowboyish version with wonderful beats. But it was What a Friend I Have in Jesus versus Brother, Sister, Let Me Serve You. And as part of the discussion group, we reflected on the words of that hymn. And then Louisa had a brainwave because she sat there and said, well, actually, you can sing Brother, Sister, Let Me Serve You to the tune of What a Friend We Have in Jesus. Then it was decided that was going to be too complicated. So you may have noticed before the service, Alan played the tune of What a Friend We Have in Jesus, and he will play it at the end of the service because those words are so familiar to so many of you. So we came down on the side of choosing our next hymn, really because of the wonderful words, Brother, Sister, let me serve you, let me be as Christ to you.
Our first reading is taken from Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 to 47. Love for enemies. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbour and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that?
Mary's story. Mary moved into a residential home when her mobility meant that she could no longer manage alone. Mentally, she was alert and lively at nearly 98. But walking, even with a frame, looked to others as if it was very painful for her. In spite of this, she was never heard to complain. Mary grew up in the inner city. She had worked all her life in the post office and spoke warmly of the friendship of those among whom she worked. Mary never married, but remained close to her nephews and nieces and their children, and was an honorary aunt to many others. Mary's faith was an important part of her life. She was involved in the local parish church. Mary's vicar and the chaplain of the home agreed that what stood out about Mary was her exceptional gift of generous friendship. There were many examples of this, and how it called forth reciprocal responses from those she befriended. Latterly, Mary and some others shared the same taxi to go to church each week. And she quickly became friends with a taxi driver who in consequence would help her into church and make sure she was all right. When she moved into the home, a young man helped her with the move. Realising that she missed her garden, he took a photo of it, had it framed and presented it to her, and it stood in place of honour on her window ledge. Mary's capacity for befriending people continued when she moved into the home. She showed empathy with other new residents, particularly those who felt lost and unhappy, and would befriend them and support them. She was often to be found in the lounge in the midst of a group of residents, leading the conversation, sharing in laughter. She had a great sense of humour. And it was Mary who was the one who built up the friendships between the residents, so that newcomers became integrated into the community of the home. She accepted her own limitations cheerfully and was thoughtful to others. Perhaps Mary's most remarkable friendship was with Elsie, aged 104. Elsie, who had been a professional pianist, had by this time lost her capacity for conversation or involvement with others. Mary took to sitting with her at services and community hymn singing, first holding her hand and then beating out the time of the hymn. Gradually, Elsie started singing again and joining more in the life of the home. When Elsie died, her granddaughter brought Mary a bouquet of flowers, and she said that she felt that Mary was now her grandmother. In response to hearing Mary's story of her generous friendship to others that made such a difference to their lives, we discussed what we thought the marks of friendship are. And here's the list. And if anybody out there thinks I've forgotten anything we mentioned, please shout out. Friends see outside of themselves. Friends don't prejudge. Friends are forgiving. Friends accept us as we are. Friends do things you don't expect them to do, which makes you feel really special. Friends give of their time, their attention. Friends give of themselves. Friends are genuine. Does that remind you of anybody? Are you privileged to have friends like that? And the one thing we agreed was that could be a description of Christ. And the other thing we agreed on, we did a lot of agreeing actually on Thursday afternoon, was that true friendships are life-enhancing. They enrich us. And the Gospel reading, which we were invited to reflect on Thursday, challenges us. It challenges us today to enhance and enrich other people's lives, just as Mary has done in that MHA home. The first challenge of that Gospel reading is to love your enemies. One of the things that's very important within maintaining and deepening friendships is not judging one another. Whilst we want to be honest with each other, it's done in a loving, caring way, not a judgmental way. But can we say the same when it comes to people who aren't our friends? I hope that I don't have any enemies, as I'm sure you don't have. So does that mean it's easy for us, we can just ignore God's command to love our enemies as ourselves? I don't have any enemies, so that doesn't apply to me. Or does it mean that we're challenged to extend our love to those who are different from us? I may have told some of you before that I received a daily email from the Henri Nouwen Society. Henri Nouwen was a priest who went to work in the L'Arche community where disabled people live with able-bodied people to help them have a richness and fullness of life. And it was this experience in the L'Arche community that changed Henri Nouwen, changed his understanding of his faith, changed his understanding of what it is that God calls each of us to do and to be. And God's very generous, because this email popped into my inbox yesterday morning when I was sat trying to write my sermon, and it was entitled Towards a Non-Judgmental Life. And I'd like to read it to you. One of the hardest spiritual tasks is to live without prejudices. Sometimes we aren't even aware how deeply rooted our prejudices are. We may think that we relate to people who are different from us in colour, religion, sexual orientation or lifestyle as equals. But in concrete circumstances, our spontaneous thoughts, uncensored words and knee-jerk reactions often reveal that our prejudices are still there. Strangers, people different than we are, stir up fear, discomfort, suspicion and hostility. They make us lose our sense of security just by being other. Only when we fully claim that God loves us in an unconditional way and look at those other persons as equally loved, can we begin to discover that the great variety in being human is an expression of the immense richness of God's heart. Then the need to prejudge people can gradually disappear. One of the marks of friendship is that we don't judge our friends. It's a mark of friendship that we're challenged to take out to all the world. That means that when a Muslim walks into this church to extend a hand of friendship and wants us to learn more about each other and each other's faith, to break down barriers and remove prejudice, we should not be suspicious. We should love. A challenge. And the Gospel reading not only challenges us to love our enemies, it also challenges us to extend our friendship. I know that there are people that I don't reach out to, who I know I should reach out to. And God challenges us to reach out, to use all those marks of friendship to share with all people around us, not just those close to us. And as part of my journeying through Lent, I've signed up for something called 40 Acts. Each day I receive an email with some activity to do. Yesterday said this: we can live on the same road for 20 years and never learn the names of those we share a street address with. Hands up, that's me. We can use the same corner shop every time we buy a newspaper and still have no idea about the man selling it to us. Hands up, that's me. Today we invite you to become aware, to look up, look around, and really notice those you come into contact with. Strike up a conversation in the process and learn their name. Our communities are very different now from how they were a generation ago. I hear of people where doors were left open, people came in and out of houses, children played freely in the street. But neighbourhoods are changing. People connect less and look at the floor more. Actually, people connect more to Twitter and Facebook, Snapchat and Instagram, but they connect less face to face. The sender of the 40 Acts email reflected that as he eats breakfast, he can see out of his kitchen window 25 people waiting for a bus. And what he notices about the queue is they don't speak, they don't smile, they don't connect with one another. There's no need, they can virtually connect with millions around the world, so why bother talking to the person stood next to you? Jesus calls us to engage, to get involved in people's lives. And one way to make a start is to spend time praying. Praying for our neighbours, praying for the people we see every day that we know nothing about, praying for this community, this place, Aldridge, where we live out our lives and live out our faith. So today, as we celebrate generous friendships and give thanks for our true friends, for the difference they make to our lives, we also remember the challenge that comes from Jesus. I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you only greet your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? So there's the challenge. Being enormously generous in your friendship, not just to those you know, but to those you have yet to meet. Amen. Let us pray. Merciful God, you call us to love our neighbours as ourselves, to testify to the reality of our faith through the love we show to others. It all sounds so wonderful in theory, but when it comes to practice, we let you down so miserably. Forgive us. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Forgive us our failure to live up to your calling over this past week, the lost opportunities and wasted moments, the angry words and unkind comments, the thoughtless deeds and careless actions, all the ways we have denied you through our actions. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Forgive us for those times when we have ignored those in need, too preoccupied with our own affairs, too concerned about our own pleasures, too protective of our own interests. All the ways we have denied you through our failure to act. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Forgive us all the ways we have brought sorrow rather than joy, hurt rather than healing, despair rather than hope, doubt rather than faith. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Forgive us the love we have failed to show, the care we have failed to express, the support we have failed to give, the pardon we have failed to offer. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Merciful God, cleanse and renew us through your grace. Cultivate what is good in our lives and root out that which is bad. Restore us through your love and recreate us by your power, so that we may learn to love others with the love you have so faithfully shown to us. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. In the name of Christ. Amen. Our next hymn is one that you won't know. It's from Singing the Faith, and it's called Thanks for Friends Who Keep on Loving. It was a hymn that was part of our closing reflections on Thursday. But Alan kindly has found a tune which you will all know. And so I invite you to sing together to the tune of Love Divine. Thanks for friends who keep